This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Gilroy today on our road show throughout the state of California, and we are joined by a council member from Gilroy. His name is Leröe Muñoz. He is also a candidate for the California State Assembly for the 30th Assembly District. That seat is currently held by Luis Alejo, who is termed out. The primary will be held in June 2016, I presume.
Correct.
So you got a nice life going on. Why would you want to run for the California State Assembly,
Absolutely.
sir?
That's a great question. And you know, there are a lot of good issues that need to be addressed here in our district. The district is very large. It runs from the southern end of Santa Clara County down south through Monterey County.
Got it.
And on the sides, it actually picks up Santa Cruz County and San Benito County as well.
So it seems pretty diverse, both economically and ethnically, demographically.
Exactly. And there are a lot of diverse issues that need to be addressed within the district as well.
I want to speak to you about one issue, and I ask you specifically because I know you had spent time as an assistant district attorney. You know that over the last 4 or 5 years, California has really gone through a revolution when it looks at incarceration. We know that we had the realignment of prisons and jails. We had lower level offenders serving their time in jails, county jails. Then we had Prop 47 passed, which reclassified felonies to misdemeanors, so a lot of folks aren't even being charged with some of these low level drug offenses. How is that kind of interplay working out on the streets, in the communities, in the 30th?
In the local areas, it's had a very dramatic effect. And in fact, I've seen this personally. I remember sending a lot of people to what I thought was going to be prison, and then ultimately it ended up being local jails. And that puts a tremendous strain on the local resources, local law enforcement in particular, and the jails. Jails, a lot of times, were not meant to house people for an extended period of time, nor were they meant to house the numbers that they're currently being required to house.
But what's interesting is, while county jails were busting at the seams, then Prop 47 comes. And what happens? There aren't as many charges for felony crimes, because a lot of these drug possession crimes, as you know, were wobblers.
Yes.
That's a term that lawyers like myself and you know. And so we actually see county jail populations now shrinking. But we also are seeing, and I don't know if there's causation, a little spike in property crimes.
It's been more than a little, actually, in several areas throughout the district. It's actually been quite large and very pronounced. And I think it has more to do with the side effects of realignment, in that when people are put out on probation, or their sentences are cut short, or they're serving time locally, it has a greater effect on the local communities.
But I had thought that one of the goals behind realignment was serve your time locally because you're more attached to your family. If there's a rehabilitation program, it's close to home. So did those benefits, have they played out?
I think they've helped for some people, but I think on the other hand, it's also been closer to home in a negative sense for some people to reconnect with old acquaintances who might have been involved in a criminal background. And unfortunately, that's what we've seen a lot of. And we've seen a lot of people slipping back into bad habits, sometimes with substance abuse. And really those issues give rise to the crime that we see with the property, because they need a means of financing that kind of habit.
What I have found interesting about these property crime trends, and crime trends generally, is that during bad economic times, historically, we have seen crime spike. And then when times are better, crime goes down. The exact opposite has happened this decade. During the recession, crime was dropping. No one could really understand it. And now that we're coming out of the recession, and it's spiking up a bit. A lot of factors in play, but what do you make of that?
I really, again, go back to the realignment and making sure that if the state is going to place this burden on the local jurisdictions, that the state also support the local jurisdictions.
Do you feel as if the state is not? Governor Brown, when a realignment first hit, AB 109, money was set aside, then Prop 30, 30 passed, more money put towards realignment. Do you feel as if the state is not satisfying its end of the bargain?
I think the state needs to continue to make sure that it's supporting the local municipalities. That's the greatest thing. It's not simply a 1 or 2 time payout to the local jurisdictions, but making sure there's a sustainable source of funding for that increased need at the local level.
I want to try to tie this into education, because, you know, for better or for worse, we are a state with a lot of folks in prison. And a lot of those folks are young, they're male, they're of color. Instead of going to college, they're in prison. Instead of getting their high school degree, they're in prison or jail, whatever term you want to use. Give me a sense of what you're seeing in the middle of this decade and the interplay.
The interplay is, unfortunately, we're seeing a nexus of low-performing schools and high-crime areas. And we're really seeing that a lot of the school districts and the law enforcement agencies surrounding those areas don't have the resources to adequately support the students. There needs to be a concerted effort to make sure that there's a full circle of change around those school districts that have wraparound services, whether it's legal services, whether it's educational services, mental health services. It needs to be a comprehensive circle that focuses around the school districts and those high crime areas.
So you know that the state of California, its voters, very generous a few years ago, passed Prop 30, providing significant funds for K-12, K-14 education. Simultaneously, the economy was turning around, and so K-12, K-14 has seen a lot of money come in. It appears we're at pre-recession levels in terms of K-12, K-14 funding. So are we on the path that you hope to see because of restored funding?
We're seeing a greater trend and increase in the funding, which is helpful. I think that's a step in the right direction. We need to be smart about where that funding goes. It's not simply just putting more money towards a problem, but making sure we're spending the dollars wisely to address the resources that students need.
So let me ask you, because you also know that while more money's been coming in, the state passed what's known as the Local Control Funding Formula, LCFF, and it's no longer the state deciding where the funding goes. Very few categoricals, very few strings from Sacramento. Rather, we have localities, local school districts deciding where to spend their money. Pluses and minuses, you know, if you think about your goals, no?
Absolutely. I think that the school districts have a greater sense for where their needs are within the community and what the students' needs are within that specific area. But again, we need to make sure that the school districts have the resources to fully evaluate the situation and understand where that money should be going.
But can they, with their money, create that resource so they know how they should spend their money?
I would hope that they could. That's certainly an issue. And there are other sources of funding that could be out there as well to address these kind of issues. I look at issues like delinquent taxpayers, corporations who necessarily haven't been paying their taxes. There's opportunity that if the state got serious about pursuing those corporations and getting that money, that would be a funding source that could be reapplied within the local communities.
Are you nervous about the apparent expiration of Prop 30, at least a part of Prop 30, next year, because so much of that money goes to K-12, K-14?
Absolutely. There needs to be, again, a consistent stream of funding and a sustainable stream of funding to ensure that schools have what they need for the resources for their students, and also, again, supporting issues surrounding law enforcement, because that's also a factor in the safety and the productivity of those schools as well. It's not simply that the students are learning in the classroom, it's that the students also are safe in the classroom and they're willing and excited to go to school.
His name is Peter Leröe Muñoz. He is a member of the Gilroy City Council. He is a candidate for the California State Assembly. I'm Brad Pomerance in Gilroy. It's Charter Local Edition.